everyone. My name's Olga Stanilovic. I'm the chair of the Serbian Council of Great Britain, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's event, which is one of the events of Serbian Month, which is now in its 17th year and is regarded as one of the most important festivals of Serbian arts and culture in the diaspora. And I'd also like to draw your attention to the Serbian Month catalogue, which accompanies the festival. And this year, the themes of the festival are Serbian films and Serbian literature, which is why we're so pleased to be hosting this event this year. You can get the catalogue online, or you can buy a copy for £15, a printed copy, and if you get in touch with the Serbian Council, that's how you can get a copy. If you'd like to help us deliver Serbian Month and the Serbian Month catalogue, there is a Just Giving page on the Serbian Council website, and any donation is welcome because we deliver this with virtually no money at all. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Susan.
Thank you, Olga, and thank you for inviting me to take part in Serbian Month. I have taken part in the past, but I think this is the first Zoom event that I've done with you. So this is great because we can obviously reach people outside London, which is always a good thing, and maybe even in other countries, I hope.
Yes.
Yes. So as Olga mentioned, I'm run Istros Books. This is a company, small publishing company I set up in, the first titles were printed in 2012. And right from the beginning, Istros Books had a focus on the culture and the language and the literature of Southeast Europe and the Balkans. So really ranging from Slovenia all across, right down to Turkey and including Albania and actually more recently Greece and Hungary, but that came a little bit later. So I've published over the years, published many titles from the region and including, of course, Serbian titles. And I'm very happy that this evening is joining us are two of the leading figures in translating and publishing and promoting Serbian literature, and that is Christina Pribićević Zorić, translator from Serbian into English and also French into English, by the way, and Vladislav Bajac of Geopoetica Publishing. So we'll hear from them later, but perhaps I can say something now a little bit about some of the titles that I've published with Istros. As I said, I cover like quite a few countries, so always in my mind, I have this idea that it should all be kind of fair and equal between the countries. So I like to give a broad range. And so it's not every year that I publish a Serbian title, but I have done about 8 or 9 titles over the years, and also try to keep a balance between male and female writers, although but I think I probably just about managed. So that's something that I always keep in the back of my mind. It's not always, of course, my main focus, but it is there as something that I like to keep this balance and fairness. And in fact, I haven't done a Serbian title for a couple of years now, and I'm very pleased to say that I just signed Dragan Velikic's novel Islednik with Laguna, which Christina is going to translate. So that will be coming out at the end of this year, which will be wonderful because that received very good reviews in Serbia, was published in French and received very good reviews. So that's something to look forward to. But going back to the beginning, I think I can show you some of the first titles that just get me on so that I make sure that you can see this. These were one of the first titles I published. So Jelena Lengold, she won the EU Prize for Literature with this collection of short stories, Fairground Magician. This was translated by Celia Hawksworth, and I think this came out in 2013. A lovely collection from Jelena, and this collection has been published in many languages because of the EU Prize. So one of the things that happens when you win the EU Prize for Literature is that the EU then kind of makes it much easier for publishers to apply for translation funding. And this is one of the reasons why this book has had such a great reach, also because they're great stories. Another book I published was Ekaterini by Maria Knežević. This was translated by Will Firth. I'm sure some of you will know Will Firth. He's worked with Istros over the years, and he's done a great deal of translation from Serbian. He's one of the leading translations from Serbian to English. So that's two of the first ones. And then this leads on very nicely for me to then introduce Vladislav Bajac, because I think, was it 2014, Vladislav, that we published your Hammam Balkania? Is that correct? So a wonderful book. And I'm going to pass to you a little bit, maybe, to talk about how this book came into English, because I believe that it was part of Geopoetica's Serbian Prose in Translation series, which is then called Spit, the Spit series, which your publishing house initiated and which ran for many years. And I think that this was translated in that, if I'm not mistaken. So perhaps I pass over to you, and could you tell us a little bit about Geopoetica and about your Spit series? That would be wonderful.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm very glad to be one of the speakers tonight, because, well, this Spit series, in fact, although it is a very, I should say, a serious series of books, it's a bit a joke in the name. Of course, this Spit, well, we used it. I don't know if it's a matter of joke in Great Britain. In Serbia, it is still, and I will tell you a short issue on that. Whenever, in politics, whenever an ambassador becomes a person who is famous, there is always a question: was he awarded by becoming an ambassador, or he was putting out of the country and being put aside of the politics? So he was spitted away, I should say, or something. I don't know if there is an expression in English. But besides that joke, of course, this was a very first use of Serbian authors, or publishing Serbian authors in Geopoetica publishing, because 31 years ago, I have found this publishing and publishing only the books from abroad, and the authors, the foreign authors. We did not publish Serbian authors at all. But then in 2009, we started publishing some Serbian authors, but in this way, translating them into English language, because we were aware that the Serbian authors and the Serbian literature is not known enough, not known at all almost. And it was a great mistake of, well, the system, or I don't know, the ideas from Serbia and Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was more serious in publishing our authors abroad, but becoming a brand new state, then we understood that even the only authors agency for literature which existed in Yugoslavia was not there anymore. And believing or not, it is still not existing. So I think Serbia is one of the countries without having a literary authors agency, which is a disaster, in fact. So maybe the idea was to do a little bit on this issue, trying to do something that is a huge job for a whole agency. So what I did with my colleagues was trying to make an idea which would be the whole idea from the very beginning to the very end, meaning that we had to find we had good books. We had some really good authors, and the first step was, in fact, to find the good translators. And of course, Tina Pribićević was one of the first, because she was already the best one existing. And I was having this beautiful opportunity to be a friend of hers for many decades, and not only in this professional way. And that's how we started translating some of the books, and we did it, I should say, in a professional way as much as it was possible, because I felt pretty alone, I should say, at the time, because in 2009, when we found it, I had a great struggle to find the money, the funding for the books, because I don't know if you know that only the fees for translators in Serbia are very low, and not only because they are very low, there are some other reasons that you should pay the fees for translators from a lesser spoken language like Serbian into English costs you, I should say, 3, 4, or 5 times more than in a opposite way. So it was a hard time for me, but I somehow succeeded in assistance of the Ministry of Culture, partly, of course, to fund this idea, and it lasted a couple of years, but last 5, 7 years, even more, it's almost stopped, and it's not there anymore, and it's a very sad story. I shouldn't say it's ending, but it's it has its problems now. But let's talk about something that was very good while it lasted well.
Yes, how many titles did you publish in that series? Because it was quite a considerable amount of books, wasn't it?
Not that much. It's more than 30, but having in mind that we had to stop and to make a break after the 20s, and now we are preparing to repair the idea, because we really had a problem with money. Now I think we have to find a way in some kind of private funding, not the state one. We don't have a good connection with the Ministry of Culture anymore, unfortunately. And there's too much politics in culture and in literature, so it's not our pair of sleeves, as I say, or cup of coffee, whatever.
In fact, you touch upon a subject which is, of course, very important for all publishers working in translation, which is the funding, which is how do you fund a translation, which can often be the most expensive part of the book production. So I agree with you that Istros has also, you know, through the years worked with various ministries of culture to get funding, but increasingly now, as with you, we're also looking for private sponsorship, or well, we have here in England the Arts Council England, which so far has not become too politicized, which is good. So that's a source for us. But I think you've done an amazing and groundbreaking work with your Spit series. I mean, obviously it's produced a number of titles, not least this one. Yeah, and I wanted to say that, of course, you were awarded by the London Book Fair for your contribution to translation with this series. Perhaps you could tell people a little bit about that award and what it meant for you.
Well, yes, it was in 2018, not that far in the past, but it was in fact a great honor for such a, I don't know, unknown language, an unknown or not enough known language and literature to be invited by the London Book Fair, because it is an award which is for international excellence in publishing, and it's a category called the Literary Translation Initiative Award. And I remember we were shortlisted with the American Association of Translators together, and with some Malaysia organization, and we won. So such a small institution as my publishing beat it. Of course, I'm joking. Such a great institution as an American Association of Translators, which I visited 40 years ago in New York, I remember. And I remember the meetings we had with really great people there, and still working. And this award was like Oscar award for me, and not only for me, I should say, because I think Tina remembers that the receiving the award was just like Oscar way of giving awards. You were shortlisted, but you didn't know who was the winner. So I was just invited as a shortlisted to be there at the London Book Fair, and I was called to approach to get an award, and I was, of course, very happy, because there is a lot of people, and there was a lot of people who were associated in preparing those books, and it was really beautiful for them to know that their work was not in vain. And that was really the very first time that I should say Serbian literature was presented abroad in a way which was not done ever before. And I remember that besides Tina, who was our kind of a diplomat in explaining who we are to the institutions in Great Britain, there was also one American institution, in fact, the Washington University, and the Department for the Ideas, the history of ideas, with two professors who were co-directors of that department in Seattle, and they were, in fact, how should I say? They in fact were one of the very first countries which said hello to us in this way. They were, in fact, inviting me to give lectures to the students who were arriving to Belgrade, in fact, to Bosnia, Croatia, and Serbia. And I was explaining them the literature in ex-Yugoslavia and the Serbia. And once or twice I was invited to talk to the university students at the University of Washington. And it was really great, because they did a great job for the English language, or the Serbian language in English, in fact. And what happened later was something that was a kind of my dream. You know, when you do books like this, then it is pretty normal to see some of the titles published in whatever country or whichever language, foreign language. That's nice. But sometimes I had a dream, like Luther King, I should say, when I had a dream to see some of the series of Serbian books in some foreign countries. And what happened was really great stuff. The very first series which was found was in the United States. One of the publishers from there published 5 books, one after another, and founding the collection titled Modern Serbian Literature. And each book had this note that it was a kind of production together with Geopoetica Publishing. After
Is
that,
is that still available, Vladislav? Is that still, you can still find those books on Amazon?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
It's possible to order them online, because I remember Haman Balkania was also at the very same time or similar time to Istros books was published there, and it was published in hard paperback, hardback, and ebook as well. So each of those books were published like that. And the other dream was realized at a very similar time. The same kind of series of books were found in China. And it was these are the big markets for a small language. And it was really a great opportunity to show the Serbian books to such huge countries and populations.
Marvelous. And tell me, the books that were translated into Chinese, did they translate them from the Serbian original or from the English? How did that work? Do you know?
Well, some were published from Serbian directly, and some from English. So one, me personally, since I'm a writer, I have two books in Chinese, and one of them was translated from the Haman Balkania was translated from English. It was already translated by Randall Major, and the American guy who is teaching in Belgrade. And the other book, titled The Book on Bamboo, which is the Middle Age of Japan and China, in fact, was translated by a Chinese professor of Serbian language and literature in Beijing. So it was directly translated from Serbian.
Of course, that's always the best scenario, but it's not always possible. So sometimes English is used as a bridge language. I know with the Arabic translations, they're often
used... it's sometimes you do that also in vain. Tina knows, and maybe she will talk more about it. Some of my books, for example, are already translated in English, but they are still in English manuscripts. They are not published already. And one of the translations is done by Tina. This book on bamboo, in fact, yeah. And but that's how you prepare for eventual succeeding in the idea. You know, sometimes you do it post festum, but sometimes you have to prepare it before, not knowing what's going to happen. But sometimes you have to believe that impossible ideas are possible in reality.
That's what it's, energy follows thought. There we go. Yeah. Everything has to start with a thought, and it's definitely to be optimistic. Yeah, because English is the language that makes a lot of books travel, and that's why I started Istros, because I knew that to get the books into English, that's a huge thing, not just for the English market, but for all other markets.
Well, I should tell you, maybe I suppose I was the very first writer, but the first, because there were several after that, that was listed for Impact Dublin Award at the time, which was the consequence of the English language, of course.
Indeed.
So after that book of mine, maybe 4 or 5 books from the Spitz series were also there at the list of Impact Dublin Award Foundation, in fact.
Yes, the Dublin Literary Award, as it's called now. The wonderful thing about that award is that all the books on the long list are nominated by librarians around the world. So these are librarian nominations of the books that they loved and appreciated during that year.
Well, and it's very original way of putting books into a visible situation, because their decisions are in fact the consequence of their readers, not only the employees, you know, and that's nice, because there are not many awards like that in the world.
That's right. It's a wonderful award and much appreciated. I wonder if you would do us the honor now, Vladislav, of reading a part of your wonderful novel to us, if you could, just to give people a taste of your writing. And of course, as you said, the book is still available through Istros or through the American publisher. So, yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. I hope it won't be boring because, you know, reading is sometimes very nice and sometimes it's not. But well, let's try. This is the part from Haman Balkania, the book which is consisting of 2 times events, 16th century of the Ottoman Empire on the Balkans and in Turkey, and the very contemporary time, 21st century on the Balkans and Turkey as well. So it's a comparable way of seeing things.
What do
And
you call
some of the
novels?
some of the,
Novel,
sorry.
yeah, another stories, yeah.
some of the characters are still living and they are real, not only imaginary. When I complained to a friend that I had perhaps dried up in my writing, he told me not to worry in the slightest. He had a certain cure for that illness. He was actually expecting the arrival of the Turkish writer Orhan Pamuk with the same diagnosis, so that the 2 of us could be cured at the same time with his prescription. The only thing I knew about Banja, about Sokolu Spa, the spa of Visegrad in Bosnia, as everyone called it, besides being the source of crystalline Sicilian carbonate used to build the bridge in Visegrad, was that there was a medicinal spring in this place 3 miles from the town. It was here that Mehmet Pasha Sokolu, in his waning years in 1575, built a domed Turkish bath, wanting to give something more to his birthplace. He was a Serb. In a brochure from 1934, I read that the radioactive waters at an altitude of more than 120 feet, 1,200 feet, treated rheumatism, neuralgia, and women's disorders. The brochure further claimed that the spa waters have an especially beneficial effect on barren women. This is a quotation. When a barren wife hails at the spa and then begets a child, the village round doth shake its head, saying, "By God, it's she hadn't hailed at the spa, and her incantations said she never ever would have a bread." So it was that I also traveled through the thick forest to the spa, which I nicknamed the Maiden Hair, after the magical looking rare grass that grows only there. I was happy to meet up with my old acquaintances, Orhan Pamuk, himself a native of Istanbul, and I was mildly surprised that he too was suffering from a dry spell, because he was known to be a prolific writer. If perchance in some period of his writing life he didn't not publish a book for a long time, the one that followed was sure to be a hefty baby. I gave birth to my children less often, and most often they were of medium weight. Such was my rhythm. However, in the last couple of years, I had not conceived a single one, and I was getting seriously worried. That was why I went to visit the stone that gave birth to water. Such fertility revered my fate. The stone on which I stepped had been polished for more than 4 centuries and was now the color of grass and moss. The water, hot but not boiling, was a heavenly warmth, and my body was turning into a ghost, alive yet dead. Pamuk and our host tried to talk through the water vapor, but the words disappeared in the glass windows of the dome and lost all their meaning. Our eyelids closed, but our eyes did not go to sleep. I pushed my way through the powerful water to sit under the heavy stream that rushes from the mountain into the small pool across my back. I am beaten as I never have been before, and I am happy to the point of silliness. This is the meeting point of the Kabbalah, Zen, Sufism, Orthodox asceticism, the Catholic eraser of the fear of sin, the artistic heights of Islam. Well, that's a kind of a picture of the book.
Wonderful, wonderful.
But I don't know if you want to hear just a couple of sentences in Serbian, not the whole part, because
Yes, please, to hear
much.
how it sounds in the original. Yes, please.
Let's read just a little bit. Kad sam se prijatelju požalio da sam možda malo presušio u pisanju, rekao mi je da ništa ne brinem. On ima siguran lek protiv te bolesti. Evo upravo mu u goste dolazi i turski pisac Orhan Pamuk sa istom dijagnozom, pa obojica možemo zajedno da se zalečimo njegovim receptom. I will read only a couple of last sentences from the chapter I read in English. Now in Serbian. Ja sam decu rađao ređe i najčešće su bila srednje težine. Takav mi je bio ritam. No ove posljednje godine nisam začeo niti jedno, pa sam se ozbiljno zabrinuo. Zato sam pošao u susret kamenu koji je rađao vodu. Takva plodnost vraćala mi je veru. Kamen na koji sam stupio glačan je više od 4 veka. Kamen u bojama strave i mahovine. Voda vruća, a ne vrela, taman onako do rajske toplote. I telo koje se pretvara u duh, živ, a mrtav. Pamuk i naš domaćin pokušavaju da razgovaraju kroz vodenu maglu, ali reči nestaju u staklenim prozorima kubeta i gube svaki smisao. Postajemo junaci majmuni iz filma sufijskog naslova Baraka, reditelja Ron Afrika, koji stojeći u mestu plove površinom što se pretvara u izmaglicu i odlazi u drugo agregatno stanje, za sobom povlačeći svaki intelektualizam. Kapci se sklapaju, ali oči ne odlaze u san. I tako dalje.
Thank you, Vladislav. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's good that you mentioned your cooperation with the American publisher, because of course, when we cooperate with other small publishers at home or abroad, we widen the readership and therefore allow more people access to the literature. As Istros Books, I worked together with Peter Owen Publishers in 2016 and 2017. And in fact, I believe, and Tina will correct me if I'm wrong, that this was an opportunity to work with her for the first time as a translator. And we produced these, together with Peter Owen Publishers, we did this 3-book, which we published all at the same time. It was called the Serbian World Literature Series. So we had Fear and His Servant, Mirjana Novakovic. I believe that was a split book, wasn't it?
Yes, yes, it was.
Yeah, so we took the translation from, very kindly, from Geopoetica. Then there was The Tragic Fate of Moritz Toth by Dana Todorovic, who is also a Geopoetica writer. And she, because she's bilingual, she translated this. Yeah. And the 3rd book was The House of Remembering and Forgetting by Philip David. And here I introduced Christina Pribićević Zorić, who worked on this book and was the first translation, I believe, for Istros. Mm-hmm. Is that right, Tina?
I think so, yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into translation? What's your history with the Serbian language? And to give people an idea of how this came about? That's a huge question, but
okay, let me so my native tongue is English. I'm American. I came to Belgrade as a graduate student for 1 year and stayed for 23. I don't even remember how I started translating. I think as a favor for someone. And then one day I got a phone call from Milorad Pavić, the writer, to ask me if I would translate 25 pages of a book. And I said, okay. And I did. I found it very difficult, I have to say. But then my Serbian was, I would say, fluent. It is still fluent, but not perfect. I do have trouble with declensions sometimes when I speak, but not when I read. And so I did the 25 pages, and he asked to see them. And he asked for 25 more, and then 25 more. And so I did the whole book. So what I'm saying is it wasn't planned on my part, nor was it planned on his, I think. And then he sent it off to the Frankfurt Book Fair, where it was auctioned. And an American company, Alfred Knopf, which is a leading publisher in the States, picked up the manuscript. May I say that the manuscript was typewritten with whiteout on it, if anyone remembers what you did if you wanted to correct your typewritten manuscript. Anyway, they picked it up and they published it. So that's how I started.
And that's, of course, I wanted to ask you about this, the Dictionary of the Khazars, which is
yes, that's the Dictionary of the Khazars. Yeah,
most successful books to come out of Serbia, apart from Danilo Kish, of course. It's one of the most successful in recent years, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was the New York Times voted it the best book of the year, the best novel of the year. So it did well. And then I translated some other books of his, and then I like very much, I read a lot, I like literature, I read a lot of literature in various languages. And I also very much believe in bringing what is called rare languages, literature and rare, that sounds slightly condescending, so I apologize for that. But it's a wonderful feeling to get good literature into a major language so that other people can see what is being written and how in different countries. And that's it. So that's what I do.
Why, can I ask you, because I actually, to my shame, haven't read all of Dictionary of the Khazars, but I understand that, you know, it covers, there's 3 different time periods. And one of them, the most recent, more up-to-date time period, as it were, that brings in the Serbian element. Otherwise, it's much more of an international book, isn't it? One could say.
Yes, it is. It is. I've been very lucky in my life in that I have translated, when I have translated a novel, the writers were alive. And so I was always able to ask questions, and I certainly had many. And I do think translation at its best is a cooperative endeavor, without a doubt, if it can be, of course. So I worked with Pavić. It was a fascinating experience because his English was good, but it wasn't his first language. But I will tell you, he played the violin and he had an ear. And so he would pick up here and there on something, and every single time he was right. Not because there was something wrong with the English, but somewhere the rhythm was missing and he caught it. So he was of enormous help. And I've had that luck with all writers. I'm now translating for you a book by Dragan Velikić, who is also an award-winning writer. And it's called Islednik, The Investigator. And it's a book about memory. In fact, I find that many books in Serbian are about memory. Filip David, the book of Remembering and Forgetting, is about the Holocaust, and it's about memory. And it's, of course, about evil and exploring evil. But it is about memory. Dragan Velikić's book is about the memory of a life. What creates a life, the architecture of a life, and that's memory. So I find that very interesting, that it seems to be a recurrent theme. And Vladislav also, his books do excavate memory, if that's the right way of putting it. So it's a wonderful learning experience, if I may say so. translation. Wonderful. Learn all sorts of things.
You made me smile when you talked about finding the rhythm, Tina, because do you remember when we were doing when you were doing the Philip David book? Of course, there's a scene in it, and it shows this on the front cover with the the railway, the sound of the train, and we were trying to work out together in English how the rhythm of the train sounds, right? Because you had it in Serbian, he'd written it in Serbian, but how does it sound to the English ear? I do remember trying to work that out with you.
Well, I was going to actually, I assumed, I hope I'm not wrong, that you were going to ask me to read something.
I was indeed.
And that's exactly, and I'll do it very short, but that is exactly the page. It's the opening page of the book of The House of Remembering and Forgetting. And it is about the train, which runs throughout, forgive that pun, runs throughout the entire book, that train. And it goes like this. The chapter is called The Noise. That sound, it kept recurring. A moving train, the wheels of a moving train. At first I couldn't tell where the noise was coming from. It woke me in the dead of night. I got out of bed, opened the window, and peered out into the darkness, trying to locate the source. There were no tracks or railway stations anywhere nearby. I put my hands over my ears. I pushed my head under the pillow. Nothing helped. That steady, rhythmic noise would not go away. Da-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. I dressed, left the house, and roamed the deserted streets, hoping to get as far away as I could from the monotonous sound of that da-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. But the sound followed me. It was with me, inside me, unrelenting. It was driving me mad. Da-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. So, rhythm.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. I remember that very well.
Yeah,
indeed.
all sorts of.
I like the way you talk about translation as a collaborative effort with the author, and of course with the editor as well, right?
So, definitely.
Yes,
definitely.
There's the first stage when you're checking with the author that you've got everything correctly, and then of course coming in, as I often am, as the editor, and I'm questioning, well, what does that mean? Does that relate to the original? Is that correct? Can we shift it around a bit? I know that this is not a Serbian writer, but we did work together on the Predrag Matvejević book,
Yes.
Bread. And that was a book where we really had to collaborate as editor and translation, because of course Matvejević was no longer with us by the time it was published in 2020. So we really had to kind of divine between us what he intended and try to bring that over in the best way we possibly could in English. Do you remember that?
I do remember it, and that's what is so wonderful about translation, is that you very rightly say a translator works with the editor. So the translator does his or her job as best they can. Although I'm about to quote a Beckett, who said, I think I got it right, fail, try, fail, try again, fail better. And I strongly believe in that. I think it's a wonderful quote for any writer. And translation is a form of, it is a kind of, how can I put it, a form of writing. So like a writer who works with his or her editor, so a translator does as well, all with a view to making the book as good as it possibly can be in a foreign language. And so you and I will have more things to discuss with the Bajac book, because I have questions. Yes.
I look forward to it. I look forward to it. And that book is going to be out hopefully in September later this year. So that's something I really look forward to. We shall inform the Serbian community of that, and hopefully there'll be an event for that. And talking about new books, this is my little bit of a segue maybe to ask Vladislav to come back in and to tell us about his latest titles, his latest book, whose title we haven't quite translated exactly into English yet, but it's got wonderful reviews, I've heard. And can you tell us a little bit about it, Vladislav?
Well, it's a book on my journalism period 40 years ago, when I was visiting United States with two fellows as freelancer and shooting TV documentaries on East Coast culture of the States. And since I was a bit in rock and roll at the time, and not only in literature, it was a kind of a mixture of everything from culture as a kind of showing what the moment was for culture in the States at the time. And a lot of we shooted documentaries and interviews. We made interviews with a lot of known, famous, or unknown, or lesser known persons, and always with a reason, which was a kind of quality. I mean, the quality was the only reason to shoot a documentary on somebody. Among those sections was, you know, cable TV, news, newspapers, literature, publishing, cartoons, everything that was culture, in fact, but it was seriously prepared for a lot of months before, and we did it in a satisfactory way. I think we were very happy about it, in fact. So what I did in book was not putting the interviews inside. I was just, it was the very beginning of the idea, showing the Yugoslavia and the States at the very same time, comparing, but not directly, of course, the similarities which were there, a lot of them, and of course the differences, and wrote a book, I should say, which was a kind of remembering, as Tina said, happy times for both countries. They changed both in a, I should say, a similar way, and those were the decades which were very happy for the States and Yugoslavia, and for Britain, as I remember. But now it's another world, and of course, when you read it, you compare the times, and then the memories are there. So I suppose the novel is a bit happy and remembering the nice times which we are looking for, all of us, I should say, during these last years.
Yes, maybe slightly nostalgic. And the title, if we direct translation, is To Shooting in the Air, something like this. But
sorry, can I jump in?
Yes, please do.
I've been thinking, which is an odd thing to say, which I sometimes do. Anyway, I've been thinking, and I have two not perfect suggestions, but beginning suggestions. One is A Shot in the Dark.
Oh, lovely.
And the other is less fortunate, maybe, but A Long Shot. A long shot has a different meaning, but I would say the closest might be A Shot in the Dark, unless we think of something better.
I think that's very good, Tina. A Shot in the Dark. I like that. It's a good title as well. What about you, Vladislav? Are you satisfied?
Yeah, it is. I don't remember if I gave that title as well among these others inside a manuscript, but it sounds almost perfect, and probably it will be perfect, because we have to find the title in English, because this is an opportunity to say that I enjoyed very much with Tina her travel translating one of my books years ago, and my experience with the translators is very wide, because some of my books were translated in more than 20 languages, which is for a Serbian author a huge number, in fact. But my experience with Tina, with her character, not only professional side of the story is absolutely exquisite. And when the questions are not only the questions, the answers are not only the answers, you have a dialogue which is in so multi levels, and it's not the case of education. It's I don't know, it's an experience of the future, I should say.
You leave me speechless.
I should second that. It's always a pleasure to work with Tina, and
Mm.
in fact, there's so little for me to do afterwards
Mm.
because she's done such a good job. But you mentioned an important title here. In fact, we have touched on an important title, which is the translation of the title of a book, which, of course, because of phrasing and catchwords and idioms in our various languages, we can't always do direct translation. So if I think of a few examples of Istros titles where we've changed the title quite a lot, but it's worked in its favor, one of them would be Pribićević's Knjiga o Uni, which of course people in the region would know that Una is a river, and they would understand that it says Book of the Una, but doesn't mean anything in English. So we borrowed a little from the Russian book, and we called it Quiet Knows the Una, which really worked in its favor because, of course, it was familiar to English readers, and it also indicated the river without saying river, and it worked very well. And another one from the Bosnian Serbian writer, I mean, I know that he's lived in Serbia for a long time, Muharrem Bazdul. He wrote a short book about Byron's time in Albania, and it was called something like Djur and Zuleha, something like this, which I really didn't feel would work in English, and I changed it to Byron and the Beauty. And I'm pleased to say that the Book Blast Translated Book Club, which is held at the Hatchard's bookstore in London here every month, has chosen it for their read for April. So I think that's to do with the title, because they liked the idea of Byron, but within this Balkan environment. So the title is very important to get that right in terms of selling books, from my point of view as the publisher. Yeah.
Well, even Islednik, the French publisher, changed the title. They felt it sounded too much like a detective story and a cop story. And so they changed it to the Stolen Notebook of Vinkovci, or in Vinkovci. Now, there is a notebook in the book, in the novel. It was stolen in Vinkovci, but I doubt that a foreign reader will know, unless they like Agatha Christie and have seen the movie Death on the Nile, that the Orient Express stopped in Vinkovci, but that's asking a lot of a reader. And so anyway, so they titled it The Stolen Notebook of Vinkovci. I spoke to Velikic, and we both agreed that, and Susie agrees, that it should be called The Investigator, because the main character in the book is investigating his own past and life through the various places he lived in, stayed in, and whatever. So titles are very important.
Yeah, lovely.
I support the idea as a publisher.
That is very important, believe me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have, Olga, I wonder if you've been tracing, are there any questions from the audience at this stage?
I'm aware that even between the UK and the US title of books, sometimes they're changed.
Yes, they are. I presume they're changed with the given audience in mind. If the title is referential, for instance, I can tell you that the dictionary of the Khazars, in the manuscript that I translated, was called the Khazar Dictionary, as it is called in the original. However, the American publisher felt that in this, even then, and that was 1988, a long time ago, even then, there weren't as many readers as one might wish, and that in a bookstore, the people who work in bookstores were not necessarily book readers, and might put the Khazar dictionary next to a Larousse dictionary,
Yeah.
or the Oxford English Dictionary, and that's why it was changed to the Dictionary of the Khazars. So, I mean, there are very valid reasons, of course, for changing titles.
Someone has just said this has been a fantastic, a fascinating discussion. Thank you. I think that's from Shola too.
I would just like to say to Vlada how very proud we are of him. He doesn't know me under the surname of Vlasic. I was Jovanović then, and that's the generation 1973, and we were young and brave, and I'm glad that Vlada remained brave and in his spirit young, which I think so. But I wanted also to add something that was said about the situation in publishing in Serbia, not because I lived there. I haven't lived there for more than 40 years now, but I'm following as much as I can. And what I thought was that things were heading downhills from the moment that actually we thought politically we were heading uphill, which is very, very strange, because we did have in old Yugoslavia, we had a brilliant and vibrant scene, and also in after year 2000, things seemed to had some new sort of, some nice wave and spirit of everything being possible again. So I don't know. I hope that Vlada will continue writing and also publishing for a long time to go, because it might happen that from this spring onwards, we will have again some hopeful times. What, however, I would like to comment on, and maybe no one will agree with me to that, but for example, what I've noticed, and especially with the latest novel, I haven't read it, Vlado, but I know that Vlada is an urban writer. And if we are talking about so-called urban writer, if we are talking about the biggest or the most prominent book prize award in Serbia, which is Ninova Nagrada, it is really strange coincidence that in last 12 years, you could actually see the least representative, often we've seen the least representative books. And I know that Vlada was shortlisted. I don't know the new book. It might be really something special, but last 3 or 4 years, these were just unusual, either mixed of genres or books related to the wars in the Balkans in the 90s. So I don't think that your memory book of America, and the happy old times will survive. It will certainly have readers, and I would be very pleased to read it. So sorry for the time.
Thank you.
No, it's okay. Thank you. Even if this, there is a rhetorical question I should answer. I mean, I understand what you mean. Thank you for praising me, but that's not the point. The point is, yes, the publishing literary scene is changing. I was one of the guys who was thinking that the Serbian literature for years was among the best ones on the Eastern Front or on the Balkans. But now I don't think that anymore. And the more important change is the choosing of the awarding the books. The criteria is different, and it looks to me like it is some kind of time in literature which is coming back from the 70s and 80s. 70s more, meaning it was not urban literature at the time. And it is still now going on in a very similar way, which I don't like. Although I'm making a joke in this last novel because the very first pages are not urban. They are explaining the very savage customs in the Serbian villages. And somebody starting reading it says, "Ooh, is this Vlada, the urban writer? This is very, very simple." But I'm making joke out of it. And of course, the whole book is dedicated to urban culture, of course. It's a kind of ironic start, but I understand what you mean. It's not a good situation, and I think that it's a never-ending story involving politics into art and literature, and that's the problem.
Svetlana has said, the sound of the train you mentioned reminds me of Proust's Madeleine memories, which is an interesting. I don't know if anyone wants Susan or.
I don't know, that's lovely, isn't it? Of course, because a sense triggers a memory, takes you back to the past, as in Proust with the Madeleines and the taste. But yes, that's a very good analogy. And I don't know what Tina has to say about that.
It does. I always think of Proust in terms of smell, I must admit. Everyone has their own version. I'm sure. Mine is smell. But sound, what is extraordinary is that that rhythm runs through 200 pages, one way or another. And that's to the writer's credit. I mean, that's a very, very difficult thing to do. And it's difficult to translate, as Susie said, because the train doesn't sound the same in all languages. You know, I'm sure the French version of da-da-doom, da-da-doom, da-da-doom is different.
Luckily, I live next to the rail. I live next to Euston, so
I know.
I could really study it.
Yeah.
And if I can, from Susan, we've got in the UK, we can access library books online. Is this the worldwide availability, or could it be made to include non-English titles, language students and universities? So I think trying to get a wider access to your books.
Do you mean available as digital, as ebooks? Is that what you talk? Is that what
I
you mean?
think that's what Susan's suggested, but maybe
yeah.
Susan can say if we've interpreted it. I think it's talking about getting library books online.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, all my books, all Istros titles are available through libraries. One should be able to order them because they're through all the international standard book number systems on Nielsen's, etc. So it shouldn't be a problem. But of course, one of the big things, and as we're talking about politics, is the lack of funding in recent years for libraries. So whereas, you know, in the past, and I think this is, it's certainly in Croatia it's the case, I don't know about Serbia, that there is always a budget for books, newly published books, to be purchased by the library systems. That is not the case in England anymore. So it wouldn't be automatically that everything I publish would be purchased by the libraries. Unfortunately not. That was the case, I heard 20 years ago, but it's not now. Of course, almost all my titles, I said, but 95% of them are also ebooks. So that's a cheaper option for people. But one also has to be careful of pirating. If books are, you know, available online, then they can easily be pirated. That's not maybe what happens, but in many countries, it can happen.
And if people want to get an Istros book, is it best to go directly to you, or is it available?
I have all, you know, everything's available on my website, so
Right.
that's perfect. But, you know, it's also available on the dreaded Amazon and all the other, you know, online bookstores. And it should be available in your book shop, your local bookshop. They can always order it And that's also a very nice thing to do because it alerts booksellers to the fact that Istros exists, and it might alert them to authors not known to them previously. So that's always a good thing to do.
Okay,
Well,
that's
if I
great.
may
And
say
maybe,
something, may I say something?
Yeah.
I just wanted to support Susie in continuing her work. I mean, it's very important. It looks like a, you know, small, humble idea at the very beginning, but I was a kind of a publisher who was strict, but liking all the people who are involved in publishing, and especially at the very beginnings. So Susie did it through the years, something that is, there is no better way to know Serbian and the Balkan literature besides her publishing. I mean, it's a lovable work when you have to be in love with because there is no money, there is no fame, there is no anything besides love, love, and love.
Thank you. Thank you, Vlad. That's very kind. Love is all we need, right?
I mean, that would be a lovely note to end on, but I've just got a couple of more messages. I think Susan said, you know, the idea of the online libraries was for extra exposure audio books, so to try and get it across. And she also says, many thanks for the readings and this meeting. It's the non-spoken undercurrent of humanity exchanging nuances on various experiences of existing that made me feel very much at home and grateful. And Shola has said, would it be possible, and this might be a nice way to end, would it be possible to hear the Serbian language for describing the sound of the train?
Ah. You have to see if you have the original, Tina.
I don't have the Serbian, but let me just make sure. No, I'm so sorry. I don't have it in Serbian anymore. That's odd, but it's true. No, I can't find it now. I'm sorry.
We'll have to call you back next year to have
Yes,
something.
come back again next year, everyone, to hear that.
Yeah. So I think we've reached our allotted time. We've gone a bit over, but just to say thank you to everyone for participating in this. I thought it was a really excellent and meeting because I've always been interested in translation and what a skill it is. And also, you know, just to welcome the promotion of Serbian literature in Britain, because it's very important to us British Serbs that we're recognised for the creativity that we do have. So thank you very much, Susan, Vlado and Tina, for your contributions, and thank you all for attending the meeting. I hope you found it as interesting as I did, and look forward to seeing you at further Serbian Month events. If I could just plug the Serbian Month catalogue, there are some really interesting articles about Serbian literature. David Norris has written an article about the history of Serbian literature. And then we've got a very interesting insight into the way Serbs in the 19th and 20th century viewed the British and the differences in character between the Serbs and the British. And then we've got things about the Serbian collection in the British Library on Istros books. So there's a lot for anyone that's interested in Serbian literature in the catalogue. And I'll just remains to say thank you to everyone. And we look forward to reading Vlado's new book in English in due course, and the other book that you're translating. So thanks very much. And good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.